My sister didn't just kiss my fiancé at our engagement party. She announced she was pregnant with his child over the microphone. She thought she had ruined my life. She didn't know I controlled the very trust fund he relied on. I didn't just ruin her wedding, I bought her life. I spent my entire life standing in the shadow of my younger sister, Ellie. If you grew up with a sibling who was universally deemed the golden child, you know exactly the kind of toxic dynamic I'm talking about. Ellie was a walking cliché, blonde, vivacious, effortlessly gorgeous, and weaponized her charm to get away with murder. My parents, Richard and Barbara Remington, practically worshipped the ground her designer stilettos walked on. When Ellie threw a tantrum because she wrecked her brand new BMW at 19, my dad bought her a Range Rover so she'd be safer. When I graduated top of my class at MIT with a degree in computer science, my mother's only comment was, "That's nice, Lydia. Do you think you could help Ellie set up the Wi-Fi in her new apartment?" I learned early on that fighting for their approval was a losing game, so I fought for my own independence instead. By the time I was 28, I had built a highly lucrative supply chain logistics software company. I was completely self-made, wealthy in my own right, and entirely disconnected from my family's old money Connecticut drama. And then came Liam. Liam Montgomery was everything I had never allowed myself to want. He was a junior partner at a boutique venture capital firm in Boston, charming, razor-sharp, and devastatingly handsome, with a smile that could disarm a bomb. We met at a tech summit, and for the first time in my life, someone looked at me and didn't see Ellie's older, nerdier sister. He saw me. We dated for 2 years. He celebrated my late nights at the office. He brought me coffee when I was stressed, and he made me feel like the center of the universe. When he proposed to me on a rainy Tuesday in our shared brownstone, offering me a stunning 3-carat oval diamond, I thought I had finally won. I thought the universe was finally paying me back for a lifetime of playing second fiddle. I should have known better. The universe doesn't pay you back, it just sets you up for a harder fall. Our engagement party was held at the Newport Country Club in Rhode Island. It was a massive, ostentatious affair, entirely funded by me, though my mother paraded around taking the credit. 300 guests, a 10-piece jazz band, and enough champagne to drown a small village. I was wearing a custom silk gown that cost more than my first car. I remember looking across the ballroom and seeing Liam laughing with my father. For a fleeting, pathetic second, I felt perfectly happy. About 2 hours into the reception, my best friend, Sarah, bumped my arm, causing me to spill a splash of red wine onto the hem of my dress. Laughing it off, I told her I'd run up to the bridal suite to dab it with some club soda. The bridal suite was at the end of a long, carpeted corridor on the second floor. As I approached the heavy oak door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. I didn't think anything of it until I heard the unmistakable sound of hushed, frantic voices. "You have to tell her, Liam. You promised you were going to do it before tonight." I froze. The voice belonged to Ellie. My hand hovered over the brass door handle. The blood drained from my face, pooling somewhere in my stomach, like lead. "Ellie, keep your voice down," Liam whispered back. His voice, the voice that had whispered he loved me just that morning, was tight with panic. I couldn't do it. The timing wasn't right. She just closed her Series B funding. She's stressed. "I don't care about her stupid software company," Ellie hissed, and I could hear the familiar petulant stomp of her heel. "I'm 8 weeks pregnant, Liam. My dress for the gala next month is already going to be tight. If you don't call off this ridiculous engagement tonight, I will walk down there and tell the entire ballroom myself. Baby, please, just give me another week. I need to figure out the finances with Lydia first. My name is on the lease of the brownstone, but she paid the deposit. I need to extricate myself carefully." "Baby," he called my sister baby. I didn't burst into tears. I didn't scream. I didn't kick the door open and throw a lamp at them like they do in the movies. Instead, an icy, terrifying calm washed over me. I stood there in the dimly lit hallway and listened to the man I was going to marry negotiate the timeline of my heartbreak with my own sister. I listened as he kissed her, a wet, desperate sound that made my skin crawl, and promised her that they would be together. They had been sleeping together for 6 months. Half a year. While I was pulling 80-hour weeks to secure my company's future, my fiancé was playing house with my sister in the very bed I paid for. I quietly backed away from the door. I walked down the stairs. My vision was tunneling, the jazz music echoing like it was being played underwater. I walked straight past my mother, who tried to flag me down to greet a state senator, and headed directly for the stage. I didn't yell. I walked up to the microphone stand, tapped it twice, and waited as the high-pitched feedback silenced the room. 300 faces turned to look at me. At the back of the room, I saw Liam and Ellie emerge from the staircase, both looking flushed. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said, my voice shockingly steady. The acoustics of the ballroom amplified my cold tone. "I'd like to raise a glass to the happy couple." A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. People raised their glasses hesitantly. "To my sister, Ellie, and my fiancé, Liam," I continued, making direct eye contact with Liam. His face went chalk white. "Who, after 6 months of sleeping together behind my back, are expecting a child. Let's wish them the best of luck, because as of this exact moment, neither of them will ever see a single dime of my money again." I dropped the microphone. It hit the wooden stage with a deafening thud. The silence that followed was absolute. And then, the chaos erupted. My mother, true to her dramatic nature, fainted into a waiter's arms. My father turned a shade of violent purple, not at Liam, but at me for causing a public scandal. Sarah, my fiercely loyal best friend, immediately grabbed a bottle of Dom Perignon by the neck, looking ready to smash it over Liam's head. I just walked out. I didn't look back. I got into my car, drove back to Boston, and by 3:00 a.m., I had every single one of Liam's belongings packed into heavy-duty trash bags and left on the curb. I changed the locks, disabled his access to the security system, and deactivated the secondary credit card he had been using on my account. The next few weeks were a masterclass in manipulation and gaslighting. My phone blew up with texts from my family, not apologies, demands. "Lydia, you need to be the bigger person here," my mother texted me on a Tuesday. "Ellie is hormonal and fragile. She made a mistake, but she is carrying your niece or nephew. Liam is going to do the right thing and marry her. You embarrassing them publicly was incredibly cruel. Cruel. I was the cruel one." Liam tried to play the victim too. He showed up at my office building, looking disheveled, begging for 5 minutes. When I finally let him into the lobby just to get him to stop harassing the receptionist, he gave me a speech that I'm sure he practiced in the mirror. "Lydia, it just happened," he pleaded, his blue eyes welling with crocodile tears. "You were always working. You were so distant. Ellie was just there. She listened to me. I never meant to hurt you, but I have a responsibility to this baby now." "You have a responsibility to a baby you conceived while cheating on the woman paying your rent," I replied coldly, staring at him like he was a stranger, because he was. "Don't ever contact me again, Liam, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing." He left, but not without calling me a cold, heartless bitch on his way out. It took me a month to stop shaking. It took another month to stop crying in the shower where no one could hear me. But by the 3rd month, the grief had fully crystallized into pure, unadulterated rage. I didn't want to just move on. Moving on is for people who believe karma will do the work for them. I don't believe in karma, I believe in leverage. I started digging into Liam's life. When we were together, I trusted him implicitly, which meant I never looked closely at his finances. He worked in venture capital, he wore Tom Ford suits, and he talked a big game about his portfolio. But I am a software engineer and a CEO. I know how to find data. I hired a private investigator, a gruff ex-NYPD guy named Frank, to look into Liam Montgomery and Ellie Remington. What Frank brought me 2 weeks later made me laugh out loud in my empty living room. Liam was broke. Worse than broke, he was drowning in debt. His boutique venture capital firm was little more than a glorified boiler room, and his personal investments had tanked. He had been using my credit cards and my lifestyle to project an image of wealth to his clients. But the real goldmine was Ellie. Ellie, emboldened by my parents' endless financial backing and Liam's fake financial prowess, had decided she was going to be an entrepreneur. She was launching a luxury lifestyle and wellness brand called Aura. She had signed a lease on a massive, two-story retail space in Boston's Back Bay district. She was planning to sell overpriced candles, organic silk robes, and ridiculously expensive face creams. Frank slid a folder across my desk. She needs $3 million to finish the build-out and launch the inventory, he grunted. Your parents cut her off from the main trust fund until she gets married, your dad's weird old-school rule. So, she's relying on Liam to secure the funding through his firm. I looked at the documents. Liam was trying to put together a syndicate of investors to back Aura. If he pulled it off, he'd get a massive finder's fee, and Ellie would get her vanity project. If he failed, they would both go bankrupt before the wedding even happened. I smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Frank, I said, tapping the folder. Who is the lead investor Liam is pitching? A guy named Arthur Pendleton. Old money, hard ass. He's on the fence, but Liam's been whining and dining him for weeks. Arthur Pendleton. I knew Arthur. He was one of the early angel investors in my supply chain software company. He trusted my judgment implicitly because my company had made him an 8-figure return on his initial investment. Ellie wanted to steal my fiancé? Fine, she could have him. But she was not going to get her happily ever after, funded by my network. I picked up my phone and dialed Arthur's private number. It rang twice before his booming voice answered. Lydia, my favorite genius. To what do I owe the pleasure? Arthur, I said, leaning back in my chair, staring out at the Boston skyline. I hear you're considering investing in a wellness brand called Aura, pitched by a Liam Montgomery? I am, Arthur replied, a hint of caution in his tone. The numbers look okay, but the founder is a bit green. Why? Do you know them? I do, I said smoothly. The founder is my sister, and the broker is my ex-fiancé. There was a long pause on the line. Arthur was a shark. He smelled blood in the water instantly. Ah, I see. And what is your professional assessment of this venture? Lydia? My professional assessment is that Liam Montgomery is overleveraged, underwater, and using your capital to fund a high-risk vanity project for a woman who doesn't know the difference between gross margin and gross negligence, I said calmly. If you invest in Aura, Arthur, you will lose every penny. Understood, Arthur said. The temperature in his voice had dropped to absolute zero. I'll be pulling my term sheet in the morning. Is there anything else? Actually, yes, I said, my eyes scanning the lease agreement Frank had brought me. Who owns the commercial building they're leasing in Back Bay? A holding company out of Delaware. Sterling Properties, I believe. I need an introduction to the owners, I said. I think I want to buy a building. By the end of the week, Arthur had pulled out of Aura, causing 3 other minor investors to panic and back out as well. Liam's funding round collapsed overnight. But I was just getting started. I wasn't just going to stop her business from launching, I was going to own the ground she walked on. I wired the down payment for the Back Bay building the following Tuesday through a newly formed LLC. Ellie and Liam were planning their dream wedding, thinking they had won. They thought they had pushed me out of the picture. They had no idea that I was quietly buying up the very foundation of their future, brick by brick, ready to demolish it with a single push. The ink on the deed for the Back Bay building dried on a Tuesday. I purchased it through a shell company I named Cobalt Equities. Legally, my name was buried under 3 layers of corporate shielding. To Ellie, Liam, and the rest of the world, the building had simply been sold to an anonymous real estate conglomerate based out of Delaware. I sat in the plush leather chair of my lawyer, Bradley Sullivan, sipping a black coffee while he slid the finalized commercial lease across his mahogany desk. It's an ironclad triple-net lease, Lydia, Bradley said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. As the tenant, your sister is responsible for rent, property taxes, insurance, and all maintenance and repairs. And because her company, Aura, has 0 credit history, Liam Montgomery signed as the personal guarantor. Meaning? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I just wanted to hear it aloud. Meaning, if Aura defaults, Liam is personally on the hook for the remaining 5 years of the lease. They can't just declare corporate bankruptcy and walk away. They are tethered to this building, and by extension, to you. I traced the edge of the contract with my fingernail. Perfect. With Arthur Pendleton pulling his massive investment, Liam was bleeding out. Frank, my private investigator, was giving me weekly updates that read like a slow-motion car crash. Liam's firm had quietly let him go. His boutique venture capital job was strictly commission-based, and he hadn't closed a deal in 6 months. He was surviving on credit cards and whatever remaining liquid cash he had hidden away. But Ellie, blissfully oblivious in her bubble of privilege, was ramping up her spending. She was planning a $200,000 wedding at the Plaza in New York, funded entirely by my parents. She was flying to Paris for custom fittings for a maternity wedding gown. She was hiring florists, ice sculptors, and a celebrity string quartet. She genuinely believed Liam was a millionaire financier, handling the boring business details while she played the visionary founder. And Liam was too terrified of losing his meal ticket to tell her the truth. He knew that if my parents found out he was broke, they would force Ellie to sign a brutal prenuptial agreement, or worse, cancel the wedding entirely. He needed Aura to open, and he needed it to generate massive revenue immediately to cover his tracks. That's when I decided to tighten the vice. As the new owner of the building, I hired an aggressively meticulous property management firm to oversee the final weeks of Ellie's retail build-out. I gave them one simple directive: enforce every single building code to the absolute letter of the law. No shortcuts, no grandfathered clauses. 2 weeks before Aura's grand opening, the property manager halted construction. Frank brought me the photos. The boutique looked stunning: marble countertops, gold leaf shelving, custom ambient lighting. But behind the walls, the HVAC system was 50 years old. The management company told them the current ventilation isn't zoned for the chemical off-gassing of the commercial-grade diffusers Ellie plans to use for her signature scents, Frank explained, tossing a heavy file onto my desk. They demanded a full industrial HVAC upgrade before they'll issue the certificate of occupancy. Quote, is $150,000. Payable immediately. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. And Liam is the guarantor. Yep. And he doesn't have it. Frank rubbed his jaw. The banks won't touch him. His credit is maxed out. So, he did exactly what a desperate man in a corner does. He went to a shadow lender. My eyebrows shot up. A loan shark? Basically, Frank nodded. A guy named Harrison Reed runs a private equity firm that operates in the gray area. Exorbitant interest rates, brutal repayment terms, and if you default, they don't just ruin your credit, they take your assets, your car, your future earnings. Liam put up his last remaining asset as collateral, which is his equity in a family trust back in Chicago. It's not much, maybe 200 grand, meant to pay out when he turns 40. He signed it away to get the cash for the HVAC. He was literally betting his entire future on my sister selling enough overpriced organic face cream to pay back a loan shark. The sheer hubris was almost beautiful. That weekend, an ivory envelope arrived at my brownstone. It was thick, heavy cardstock with gold-embossed lettering. An invitation to Ellie and Liam's wedding. Inside, a handwritten note from my mother read, Lydia, we expect you to put the past behind us and support your sister. Family is family. RSVP by the 15th. Family is family. They expected me to sit in a pew, watch the man who cheated on me marry the sister who betrayed me, and smile for the photographer. They thought my silence over the last few months meant I had submitted. They thought I had retreated to lick my wounds. I took a thick black marker, wrote return to sender across the pristine envelope, and dropped it back in the mail. I didn't need to attend the wedding. By the time the wedding day arrived, there wouldn't be anything left to celebrate. The soft launch of Aura was scheduled for a crisp Thursday evening in late October, exactly 2 weeks before the wedding. Ellie had invited every socialite, influencer, and wealthy housewife in Boston. My parents had flown in, treating the opening like a royal coronation. Aura was supposed to be the launchpad for Ellie's new life. It was going to prove to everyone, especially me, that she didn't need my shadow to thrive. I arrived at 7:00 p.m., wearing a tailored charcoal Tom Ford suit that screamed power. The street in front of the boutique was lined with black SUVs. Inside, the store smelled overwhelmingly of eucalyptus, crushed lavender, and desperation. Waiters weaved through the crowd holding trays of champagne. I stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold. Ellie was holding court near a display of $300 silk pajamas, her baby bump clearly visible under a tight, shimmering designer maternity dress. She was glowing, laughing loudly with a group of women. Across the room, standing near the register, was Liam. He did not look glowing. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. His tuxedo was sharp, but his face was gaunt, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He was sweating. He knew the $150,000 HVAC fix had drained his shadow loan, and rent was due tomorrow. If he didn't sell out half the inventory tonight, he was going to default on Harrison Reed's loan. My mother spotted me first. Her smile vanished, replaced by a deep, aristocratic scowl. She marched over, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. "Lydia, what are you doing here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so the nearby influencers wouldn't hear. "I thought you made it perfectly clear you wanted no part of our family when you mailed back the wedding invitation like a petulant child." "I'm not here for family, Mother," I said, my voice smooth and chillingly calm. "I'm here for business." "Business? This is your sister's night. Don't you dare ruin this for her." By now, Ellie had noticed the commotion. She handed her champagne glass to a friend and waddled over, Liam trailing a few steps behind her. When Liam made eye contact with me, I saw the exact moment his stomach dropped. He knew I didn't show up to places uninvited unless I held all the cards. "Lydia," Ellie sneered, crossing her arms over her chest. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here. Are you that jealous of my success? You just couldn't stand to see me and Liam happy, could you?" "Happy?" I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Ellie, I don't care about your happiness. I care about my property." "Your property?" She laughed, looking around the lavish boutique. "I own this store. Liam and I built this. You have nothing to do with it." I slowly reached into the inner pocket of my suit jacket and pulled out a crisp, folded legal document. "Actually, Ellie, you don't own the store. You lease it," I corrected her gently, handing the paper to Liam, who looked like he might vomit. "From Cobalt Equities, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of my holding company." Ellie frowned, looking back and forth between me and Liam. "Liam, what is she talking about?" Liam unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was a formal notice of default and immediate eviction. "You bounced your rent check yesterday, Liam," I said, projecting my voice just enough so the nearby guests stopped talking and turned to listen. The hum of the party began to die down, replaced by the suffocating silence of a public execution. "You wrote a check for $25,000 to my property management company, and it bounced, because your accounts are entirely empty." "Liam?" Ellie's voice spiked with panic. "Tell her she's lying. You paid the rent. You showed me the receipt." Liam couldn't speak. He just stared at the eviction notice, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. My father, Richard, had pushed his way through the crowd by now. He snatched the paper from Liam's hands, reading it quickly. His face turned a dangerous shade of crimson. "Liam, what the hell is this?" my father roared, no longer caring about the audience. "Why does Lydia's company own this building? And why does this say you have zero funds?" "Because he's broke, Dad," I said, stepping forward. I wasn't going to let Liam spin this. I was going to burn his house of lies to the ground. Liam lost his job at the venture capital firm 6 months ago. The same month he started sleeping with Ellie. He has been living off credit cards and high-interest shadow loans. He couldn't secure the investment for Aura, so he borrowed money from a loan shark just to turn the lights on tonight. A collective gasp echoed through the boutique. The influencers were recording on their phones. I didn't care. Let them broadcast it. "You're a liar." Ellie screamed at me, tears welling in her eyes. Liam is a millionaire. He's paying for my inventory. He's. She trailed off, finally looking at Liam. Really looking at him. He was weeping. Silent, pathetic tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Ellie, Liam choked out, stepping back from her as if she were radioactive. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to lose you. I thought if we could just get the store open, the revenue would save us. Save us from what? My father bellowed, grabbing Liam by the lapels of his tuxedo. From Harrison Reed, I supplied helpfully. The private equity loan shark Liam used to pay for the HVAC system I legally forced him to upgrade, a loan that he has defaulted on as of this morning. Which means, I paused, looking directly at my sister, whose face had completely crumbled. Everything in this store, the inventory, the fixtures, the register now belongs to Mr. Reed's collection agency. Right on cue, the front door of the boutique chimed. 3 large men in dark, cheap suits walked in, carrying heavy-duty padlocks and clipboards. They weren't caterers, they were asset liquidators. Mr. Montgomery? The lead man asked, his voice cutting through the silent room. We're here on behalf of Reed Financial. We have a court order to seize all assets on the premises. Everyone needs to clear out. Now. Ellie let out a sound I had never heard before, a visceral, guttural shriek of pure humiliation. She grabbed a display of expensive glass perfume bottles and swiped them to the floor, shattering them into 1,000 pieces. Get out! My mother shrieked at the liquidators, trying to physically block them. Do you know who we are? We are the Remingtons. Lady, I don't care if you're the Queen of England, the man grunted, easily stepping around her. The store is closed. I turned to walk away, my mission complete. But my father grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, his eyes wild. Lydia, stop this. Pay the rent. Pay off the loan. You have the money. This is your sister's future. She's carrying a child. I looked down at his hand on my arm, and then up into the eyes of the man who had spent 30 years prioritizing Ellie's whims over my existence. Her future? I whispered, pulling my arm free. You mean the future she stole from me? The fiancé she slept with in my bed? No, Dad. I don't think I will. They made their bed. Now they can sleep in it. On the street. I walked out of the boutique. The sound of my sister's sobbing echoing behind me, mingling with the crash of shattering glass and the heavy thud of the liquidators locking the doors. The crisp autumn air hit my face, and for the first time in nearly a year, I could finally breathe. The news of the Back Bay disaster tore through Boston's high society faster than a wildfire in dry brush. By Friday morning, my phone, which had been buzzing for weeks with demands and guilt trips from my family, was entirely, beautifully silent. The silence wasn't an apology, of course. It was the suffocating, heavy embarrassment of a family realizing their golden child had just tarnished their pristine legacy on a brutally public stage. The extravagant plaza wedding, heavily anticipated and dripping with a $200,000 budget, evaporated overnight. My parents abruptly pulled the funding, losing tens of thousands in non-refundable deposits to florists, caterers, and the celebrity string quartet. Richard Remington might have spoiled his youngest daughter her entire life, but he was a fiercely proud businessman first. He wasn't about to underwrite a high society union to a man drowning in high-interest debt, facing immediate asset seizure, and splashed across local society gossip blogs as a fraud. Liam's downfall was swift, absolute, and merciless. Harrison Reed's collection agents didn't just lock up the boutique, they systematically dismantled Liam's entire existence. Because he had signed as the personal guarantor, they went after everything. His leased luxury BMW was repossessed straight out of the driveway of a cheap motel he had fled to. His family trust back in Chicago, his only safety net, was aggressively liquidated to cover the principal of the shadow loan, leaving him with absolutely nothing for his future. But the real nail in his coffin was the impending legal trouble. 2 weeks after the boutique closed, I received a frantic voicemail from an unknown number. It was Liam. He was sobbing, begging me to call my lawyers off, swearing he would do anything to make it right. I simply deleted the message and blocked the number. When applying for the loan to fix the HVAC system, Liam had forged documents claiming he was still employed at the venture capital firm to prove his income. Once the firm's HR department caught wind of his forged signature on their official corporate letterhead, they pressed criminal charges for fraud. The last I heard, Liam was working as a night shift dispatcher for a towing company in South Boston, living in a cramped, moldy studio apartment and trying to scrape together cash for a court-appointed criminal defense attorney. But the universe wasn't finished. Karma, it turns out, has a beautifully wicked sense of timing, and it was saving its absolute best trick for my sister. Following the boutique's collapse and Liam's disgrace, Ellie moved back into my parents' sprawling Connecticut estate. She played the tragic, wounded victim of a cruel, vindictive older sister and a lying, manipulative fiancé. She fully intended to ride out her pregnancy in luxury, banking on the fact that producing the first Remington grandchild would permanently secure her place in my father's will and force him to unlock her trust fund. 3 months later, the baby was born. I didn't visit the hospital. I didn't send a gift or a card. But my fiercely loyal best friend, Sarah, who still ran in the same suffocating social circles as my mother's country club associates, called me exactly 2 weeks after the delivery. I was sitting on the terrace of my new penthouse, reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone rang. Her voice was trembling so hard from suppressed laughter she could barely speak. "Lydia, put your coffee down," Sarah gasped over the phone. "You are not going to believe what just happened in Connecticut." "Try me," I replied, leaning back and watching the city lights. Ellie's baby had a minor medical complication. Nothing serious, just slight jaundice, but they needed to run some standard blood types. Liam, playing the dutiful, groveling father hoping to win his way back into the Remington fortune, offered to donate blood if needed. "Lydia, the blood types didn't match. And I don't mean a minor discrepancy. The doctors told your father it was biologically impossible for Liam Montgomery to be the father of that child." I froze, the cool evening breeze suddenly feeling electric. "Are you entirely serious?" "Dead serious," Sarah laughed, a sharp, triumphant sound. "Your father lost his mind. He dragged Liam and Ellie into a private room and demanded an immediate, legally binding paternity test. He wasn't going to let his estate go to a bastard child if Liam wasn't the father. The DNA results came back yesterday. The father isn't Liam. The father is Preston Davies." The name echoed in my head, bringing a sharp, cynical, and ultimately victorious smile to my face. Preston Davies was a wealthy, 45-year-old, married hedge fund manager who practically lived at the Newport Country Club. Crucially, he was also one of my father's primary golf partners and business associates. The pieces clicked together with sickening, brilliant clarity. Ellie hadn't just been sleeping with my fiancé. She had been having a reckless, ongoing affair with a much older, incredibly wealthy married man in our parents' inner circle. When she discovered she was pregnant, Preston undoubtedly panicked. He likely threatened to cut her off entirely to save his own marriage, his reputation, and his millions. Cornered and terrified of being a single mother without funding, Ellie looked around for the nearest, most gullible life raft. She saw Liam Montgomery, who she believed was a rising star in venture capital, and pinned the pregnancy on him. She ruined my engagement and shattered my trust, not out of an undeniable, sweeping love for my fiancé, but out of desperate, selfish, calculated self-preservation. The resulting fallout was apocalyptic. It shattered the Remington family image permanently. Preston's wife, a ruthless socialite in her own right, filed for a brutal, highly publicized divorce, explicitly naming Ellie Remington in the lawsuit as the homewrecker. My parents were completely and utterly ostracized from their country club, their charity boards, and their elite social circles. Unable to bear the crushing public humiliation of his golden child sleeping with his golf partner, my father finally did what he should have done 10 years ago. He cut Ellie off completely. He kicked her out of the Connecticut estate, set up a modest, tightly controlled trust solely for the baby's basic medical and educational needs, but firmly refused to fund Ellie's lavish lifestyle ever again. She was forced to move into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in a dreary suburb, relying entirely on court-ordered child support from a man who despised her. As for me, I sold the Back Bay commercial building to a corporate developer 6 months later for a 40% profit. Cobalt Equities expanded its portfolio, buying up commercial real estate across the East Coast. My supply chain software company went public the following year, cementing my status not just as a self-made wealthy woman, but as an untouchable, formidable force in the industry. Sometimes, people in my network ask me if I regret what I did. They ask if I miss my family, or if the cold execution of my revenge left me feeling empty. I simply smile. I don't feel empty at all. I excised a toxic rot from my life before it could permanently infect my future. I didn't just survive the fire my sister set to burn me alive. I walked into the flames, took the oxygen out of the room, and used the ashes to build my empire. Did Lydia go too far? Or did Ellie and Liam get exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of brutal revenge and sweet karma, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable real-life drama. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks.